Well, thanks everybody for hanging in there. Who's happy it's not 105 degrees? Yay, all right, me too. We just got a beautiful night, so thanks so much for coming out. This is for position 4 on the Richland City Council. Let's introduce our candidates. To my right and your left, Michael Luzo, Ginger Wireman, and Ryan Luxon. So give them a big round of applause, and then we can give them applause at the end of the whole deal. We're going to start with an opening statement. Mr. Luzo, you're first.
Good evening, I'm Michael Luzo. If you know Dory, she's my sister, so I'm also running for City Council. When we're talking about the Duplin Bridge, Mr. Mayor, I have a bad habit. I like to call the state. I like to call the state to find out about budgeting. When I bring up the fact of having a bridge in North Richland, I also like to talk to older voters. I don't think it's fair to older voters to give them a burdensome tax. You're a lawyer, and you know what I'm talking about. I'm not a lawyer, but I look to the term a little bit. Also, when I look at my platform, I would like to go in and continue to build up, say, in the central business district, and that's along Jadwin. If we could go higher than we have. I've also looked into buildings we have. Floor Daniels apparently has been moving out of the building, and there's a real estate developer, or there's a landowner. I talked to Ms. Rentz about this. They're looking to sell it. They have a property manager in Spokane, and they're looking to sell it. I would like to bring in somebody, programmers, if you will, somebody that go ahead and bring them in and bring in people that are more diverse into our community. And diversity itself, I apologize, most folks. I am for diversity. This is biblical. And that, if you wrongfully killed somebody, you were allowed to go to a neutral city. That's diversity. I do support Mayor Ed Murray when he says diversity, and mostly I'd say inclusiveness. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Wireman.
Well, thanks to the League for having this, and since there's shade on the whole bowl now, I would encourage all of the people over to the right that I can't see to move out to the middle. So I moved to Richland in 1978. It was during one of the boom times, which thankfully we haven't had the boom and bust cycles that we used to have. And when I moved here, I lived in Columbia Park Campground. And then I went to Richland High and graduated in 1982 and went away to college. And I moved back in 1993 to take care of my mom, Mary Baird, who I believe was in the League until she passed away. I was on the founding board of the Taptoll Greenway and actively volunteered to protect the Hanford Reach, and volunteered at the schools helping with science fair, Badger Mountain Kids of Steel, and the Drums Along the Columbia. And so I've given a lot to this community. My biggest goal on council would be to improve resident engagement, and I think the first part of that is listening to the public and listening respectfully. I think it's more than just checking boxes as far as public notice is required, and I think we can do a better job of going where the people are when we do public outreach. In trying to engage millennials, the city could do more with that, and I'm really concerned about the vacant commercial properties and safe walking and bicycling in the city and protecting our river shore and keeping it open to the public.
Thank you. Mr. Luxon.
Thank you so much for having us out. For spending your Tuesday night out here with us. Really appreciate it. My name is Ryan Luxon. I'm running for Richland City Council position 4, and give you a little bit of information about myself. I was born and raised here in Richland, proud Richland High bomber. Went off to University of Washington, got my business finance degree, and then went down to Florida to get my law degree. After practicing a couple years of corporate law, I decided that really wasn't for me, and I wanted to come back home. Missed Richland, missed my family. This great community, and the reason why I'm running for city council is because I want to be part of the vision for this city for the next 20 years. I want to help use my skills as a deputy prosecutor in Benton County. My role is to advise the commissioners in the jail and the sheriff, and I want to use those skills to help with our partnerships with our local communities and help with targeted economic development to make this place a better city. So thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, we'll start with question 1. Mr. Luzo, we'll start with you. Here's our question. What one direction of the current council do you most support? And if elected, what one direction would you try to change?
I would start listening to people more. Apparently, there was a public meeting where folks were talking about George Washington Way, and it seemed like with the Dupertail Bridge, they were not listening to a lot of the taxpayers. You do need to listen to the taxpayer. You have older taxpayers. We also have a state problem with the McCleary decision. They're going to be wanting to sit there and change the tax base, and the state's going to want to make equitable type decisions for schooling. I do support inclusiveness. It depends upon how far the city council's willing to go. Depends on how far the committee will go to go ahead and make things inclusive.
Thank you. Ms. Wireman.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure thing. What one direction of the current council do you most support? And if elected, what one direction would you try to change?
Well, one thing that I think is important that most people probably don't know about, I attended one of the workshops a few weeks ago, and the city is undertaking actually a salary survey to make sure that our city staff are adequately paid for the work they do and competitively compared to other municipalities, so that we'll have job positions and job descriptions aligned correctly and right-sized for our staff, because they represent us at every turn. And if we want to have a good face to the community, we need to have good people working for us, and they need to be compensated appropriately. I would like to take the engagement thing farther and be more creative. Like I said, instead of just doing what's required by law with announcements in the paper or on the web, I think we could do a lot with taking planning out to the public in places where the public already is. It's hard for people to go to a meeting on a Tuesday night, especially here where a lot of people work 410s. So figuring out how we can have occasional Saturday meetings, maybe even having childcare support for those meetings through the Girl Scouts or the Y, and maybe taking the planning department down to Howard Amon Park on a busy weekend so people can see what's going on in the planning department, making it more than just a checkbox. And of course, trying really hard to engage people who haven't felt comfortable engaging in the past.
Thank you, Mr. Luxon.
I think the city's doing a great job with the plans for the Swift Corridor project, opening up the waterfront. We need to continue to utilize that valuable resource, and the plans are to move the fire station in the city hall, and I think that that's a great project. But one thing I would like to do is to build on that and to go further. I know the county and the city partner right now in economic development, and I think the city has about $1.5 million in economic development funds that grows, I think, another $600,000 a year for the next 10 years. So I'd like to leverage that money and further develop the waterfront, look at, re-explore the idea of something like a public market. I really think that we can do some great things with our waterfront and make Richland the jewel of the Tri-Cities, and I think it's time that we start acting on some of these things rather than just doing studies and putting them on the shelf and saying those look really nice and not doing anything.
Thank you. We'll move on to question 2. Ms. Wireman, we'll start with you. Would you be in favor of the City Council taking steps to impose a citywide income tax? This was just proposed in Seattle, actually just passed, where it suggested to put a 2% tax on income more than $250,000 for single filers, $500,000 for joint filers, with a goal of reducing other more aggressive taxes on city residents while also reducing dependence on the federal dollar.
I don't know that I'd support it, but more importantly, I think we don't have that many people in Richland that make that kind of money. I was actually really surprised recently to discover that the 99338 zip code is where all the real money is, up in Canyon Lakes and Badger Canyon. I was thinking it would be 99354. And I was doing the research because I wanted to look at demographics and income and education levels. So that said, I don't think that an income tax at a municipal level in this municipality would be a good fit, and it will be really interesting to see where that shakes out in the courts, what the city of Seattle did.
Mr. Luxon.
Absolutely not. One, it's not legal. There's statutes in place, and the Constitution, the Supreme Court has already ruled that that's not legal. So I think the recent action in Seattle is more of a political move than a reality. So I don't support things that, one, aren't actually going to happen. Two, I don't think it's right from a fundamental standpoint. I think that we need to treat all of our residents the same, and I don't think we should be singling out one particular group of people and taxing only those people. So, yeah, so I would not support that.
Thank you, Mr. Lusso.
We're talking the 16th Amendment, folks. It was passed in 1910. Yes, and as the gentleman said here, the city of Seattle did go ahead and look at income tax. We're going to be adding something that is currently not legal within the state of Washington, an income tax. If you start talking taxes, B&O taxes, income taxes, you start talking to people, they're starting to talk to them about their wallet. Now, people don't mind paying taxes, but as I brought up previously, you're going to have to start asking, where are we going with this? Are we going to look at capital gains? Are we going to look at different things? At this time, I'm not quite in favor of an income tax, but I am in favor of trying to go ahead and improve and build upon our tax base within the city of Richland.
Thank you. We'll move on to question 3. Mr. Luxon, we'll start with you. This question is about Claybell Park in South Richland. Here's the issue. Park users do not use the park parking lot, apparently, but instead they park on both sides of an S-curve which borders the park. And this creates a situation where drivers are just not able to see children or others darting into the roadway until the last minute. What steps would you recommend to be taken to reduce the extreme dangers that are created by this situation?
Wow, great question, given that I live about 100 yards from Claybell Parks, and I didn't plan it that way. So I drive that way every single day, and I have a 4-year-old and a child on the way, so this is a very big issue for me. I don't think the city did a great job in planning that out. The parking lot is way too far away from all the activities that people use, and unfortunately, I think that was an oversight, and everyone parks on that street. And my first thought was to put speed bumps in, but I've been told that since the bus goes that route, that you can't actually have a bus on that route. So if the bus can't be rerouted, I think the city needs to do a better job of putting up the flashing lights like you see on Leslie currently for the golfers in Meadow Springs that cross, that really warn people of the danger, because it is a very, very dangerous intersection. And I think we need to make sure that our kids are safe. So, thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Lusso.
That's a safety issue, folks. If you can't see anybody in front of you as a driver, that comes down to a safety issue. That's a hazard that the city might be looking at also. You're going to preset drivers, and individuals are going to be walking across the street and going to be hit by a vehicle. You also have to understand Claybell Park is on the bottom of where we have the Amon Raceway, where they're going to have their kill crossing there, and that's a whole different issue. I won't get into that. But the street right now is a long, long street, and you're going to have to go ahead and make sure it's safe. You could go ahead and, as you do in Kennewick, you could go ahead and have the push a button, or you could use flags and go across the street, maybe those lime green flags like you see over here in front of the federal building. But right now, I don't see a good reason for creating a safety hazard for anybody walking across the street.
Thank you. Ms. Wireman.
Well, I think the reason that people park there is primarily because of shade, but yeah, proximity. And I would like to look for solar loans and put solar shade structures over the parking lot so people would have more enticement to park in the parking lot. Because we own our own utility, so we could make our own power. It'd be something to at least look into. And I think an education campaign, and this is where public engagement, teaching people that we built the parking lot, our tax dollars paid for it, we built it for your safety, please use the parking lot, and maybe spending some time out there with the Parks Department, canvassing and talking to the tennis players and the basketball players and encouraging them to use the parking lot. Or most of them are probably from within a 1 or 2 mile radius. They could actually walk or ride their bicycles the whole way, and then the cars wouldn't be parked along the street, causing visual obstructions.
Thank you. We'll move on to question 4. Mr. Lusso, we'll start with you. This is an audience question. What can City Council do to fill the large vacant stores that are currently in central Richland?
As I said before, we need to go ahead and contact outside the area if you have to. Different entrepreneurs or different businesses to go ahead and bring in a willing workforce, a willing business owner to go ahead and start adding some capital in the city of Richland. You do have vacant stores. You have vacant stores by Dairy Queen. You can go ahead and fill that, but you need to have some come in there to do so. You do have a Floor Daniel building that needs to be filled. Advertise, bring somebody in, go talk to the city manager, bring somebody in to go ahead and add something to the city and see if somebody's willing to come in for that.
Thank you. Ms. Wireman.
I've actually been obsessed with vacancies for a while, and I'm very interested in urban revitalization and urban renewal, and there are lots of creative things that other cities are doing, including turning commercial facilities into residential facilities. So maybe one of the floor buildings could be converted into something because we have a housing shortage of moderate-priced housing in central Richland. And I know that the city does a lot for economic development, and I know that Triduc and the ports do as well. I think it would be great to do a specific targeted study of the types of corporations we think we want to bring here and talk to relocation managers and ask them what are they looking for. We luckily got the old Safeway building used by Bechtel for a while, but now it's vacant again, and so we have 4 vacant grocery store spaces. And then the burden of that vacant Albertsons is not just that we have that hulk of a store empty, but the people who live in that neighborhood are having to buy staples at Rite Aid if they don't have reliable transportation to get to Winco or Fred Meyer. And while it may be physically possible to walk to Winco or Fred Meyer, a lot of people wouldn't think it is safe to walk to Winco or Fred Meyer. There's no shade to sit down in if you're taking a walk down Wellesian. And so I think it's a whole package. I think companies want to be someplace that's progressive and is friendly and walkable and usable.
Thank you. Mr. Luxon.
Thank you. If we make downtown Richland desirable place to come and visit, then residents are going to want to live here, younger people and older people. If we continue to improve on our parks, if we continue to invest in our things like the Swift Corridor project and be aggressive in our economic development properties, I see the city starting the engine of the economic development of the downtown area. And I think once we do that, businesses and people are going to want to come into downtown. And the more people that want to live downtown, the more opportunities there are going to be and the more businesses that start. So I think that the city plays a role in getting the kind of a snowball effect, getting the snowball started, and then we let the private development take over from there. So that's what I see.
All right, thank you. Thanks to all the candidates. You can give them a big round of applause. Again, Michael Luso, Ginger Wireman, and Ryan Luxon. Great job, everybody.